What is going on here?
The sun had barely risen over the rolling fields when Jacob Carter, a quiet black farmer in his late 50s, climbed onto his old tractor. His land stretched wide, acres of soil he had worked with his bare hands for decades. But today, peace shattered. Before we dive into today's story, make sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment where you are watching from. Now let's dive into the story. Two police cruisers barreled down the Date Road, sirens cutting through the morning calm. Dust rose as officers leapt out, hands already on their weapons. Jacob Carter, one barked. Jacob stepped down slowly, confused. "Yes, sir?" "You're under arrest for trespassing. This property isn't yours." Jacob froze. His heart pounded. "What are you talking about? This land has been in my family for 3 generations." But his protest meant nothing. Cold metal cuffs snapped around his wrists. The officers shoved him toward the cruiser, while neighbors peeked from porches in disbelief. As the car door slammed, Jacob's eyes drifted back to his fields. Something in his gut told him this wasn't just about land. This was about something bigger, something worth more than he could ever imagine. At the county jail, Jacob sat in a cold cell, bewildered. He had no criminal record, no disputes, nothing. So why was he suddenly trespassing on his own farm? The answer came the next morning, delivered in whispers. A deputy slid his tray of food across the bars and muttered, "They found something on your land. Something valuable. That's why you're here." Jacob gripped the bars. What did they find? The deputy didn't answer, but Jacob's mind raced. Back at the farm, bulldozers rolled in. Men in suits gathered near his fields, pointing at survey maps. His neighbors watched nervously as strange drilling rigs were unloaded. Meanwhile, in the courthouse, Jacob's attorney slammed a thick folder onto the desk. "This is a sham," she hissed. "They filed fraudulent claims saying you never owned the deed. And guess who signed the paperwork? The same developers now sniffing around your farm." Jacob's stomach churned. "They are trying to steal my land." But before the lawyer could answer, 2 suited men strolled into the hearing room. Their smiles were sharp, their voices smooth. "Mr. Carter," one said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Why fight? Sign this. Sell us your land, and we'll make this all go away. You'll walk free today." Jacob's calloused hand shook as he read the number. It was high, enough to tempt anyone. But then he saw the clause in fine print. He'd be giving up everything beneath the soil. His lawyer leaned close. "Jacob, if they are pushing this hard, whatever's on your farm is worth far more than they are offering." Jacob pushed the paper back across the table. His voice was steady. "This land isn't for sale." The men's smiles faded. One whispered coldly as they walked out, "You'll regret that decision." Days later, the truth exploded. An investigative journalist published leaked documents. Oil reserves had been discovered beneath Jacob's land. Millions of barrels, billions of dollars in value. Jacob's arrest? A smokescreen. The cops weren't just protecting developers. They were pawns in a scheme to steal his inheritance. The story spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed, "Farmer arrested in land grab scandal." Oil found on black-owned land. Who really benefits? Public outrage grew. Protesters gathered outside the jail demanding Jacob's release. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the charges against him were dropped. But Jacob wasn't free. Not really. When he stepped outside, cameras flashed, microphones shoved in his face. "Mr. Carter, what's next? Will you sell? Will you drill? Are you afraid?" Jacob looked past the cameras toward his farm in the distance. His voice shook, but his words were firm. "I just want what's mine. I won't be bullied off my land." For the first time, the power had shifted. They couldn't hide the truth anymore. But Jacob knew they weren't done with him. That evening, Jacob sat on his porch, staring at the fields where his father and grandfather once worked. This land wasn't just soil. It was memory. It was sacrifice. It was dignity. They had mocked him, arrested him, tried to erase his name from his own deed. But Jacob's resolve only grew stronger. He whispered to himself, as if speaking to his ancestors, "They thought I was weak, but they forgot this land made me strong, and I'll fight for it no matter what it costs." The lesson was clear. Wealth isn't just about money. It's about heritage. And no amount of corruption can silence the truth forever. Just as Jacob felt a rare moment of peace, headlights appeared on the Date Road. A black SUV rolled up slowly, its windows tinted. It stopped at the edge of his driveway. The door opened. Out stepped one of the suited men from court. He didn't bother to smile this time. He placed a sealed envelope on Jacob's fence post. "Consider this your final warning," he said quietly, his voice like ice. The SUV sped away, leaving only the sound of crickets in the night. Jacob stared at the envelope, his hands trembling as he tore it open. Inside was a single photo, his farmhouse circled in red ink. Jacob Carter barely slept that night. The photo from the envelope lay on his kitchen table, his farmhouse circled in red. Every creak of the wooden floor made his chest tighten. Every headlight passing the road sent his heart racing. At dawn, he walked outside, boots crunching on the date. His land looked the same. The fields, the old barn, the oak tree his father planted decades ago. But Jacob knew better. Things had changed. This wasn't just his farm anymore. It was a battlefield. The first attack came quietly. Jacob walked to his barn and found the lock smashed. Inside, his tractor was destroyed, wires cut, tires slashed. By noon, Ma came. His cattle broke free after fences were mysteriously cut. Barrels of stored grain spilled across the ground like wasted gold. And then came the visit. Two men in suits rolled up in a black SUV, the same one from the night before. They stepped out casually, as if they already owned the place. One smirked. "Rough morning, Mr. Carter. Shame to see all this hard work go to waste." Jacob's fist clenched. "You think scaring me will make me sell?" The man's smile widened. "Not scare. Convince. There's a difference." They drop another envelope on his porch, this one stuffed with cash. "Last chance. Take the deal, or you'll lose more than cattle." Jacob's jaw tightened. He pushed the envelope back into the man's chest. "Get off my land." The smile vanished. His eyes turned cold. "Then don't say we didn't warn you." By evening, news spread. Neighbors whispered, shaking their heads. "They won't stop, Jacob," one said. "You can't fight them alone." But Jacob wasn't alone. At church that Sunday, when Jacob stood and told his story, the congregation went silent. Then, slowly, they rose to their feet. One by one, farmers, teachers, shop owners, and even the mayor spoke. If they come for one of us, they come for all of us. By the next morning, trucks lined up at Jacob's gate. Neighbors brought tools, wood, and food. They rebuilt his fences, repaired the barn, and stood guard through the night. For the first time in weeks, Jacob didn't feel fear. He felt hope. The men in suits returned. But this time, they didn't find Jacob alone. They found dozens of people, neighbors, friends, even local reporters, standing shoulder to shoulder across his driveway. One of the men sneered. "You think a few farmers with pitchforks will stop us?" But Jacob stepped forward, holding a yellow document high above his head. "This is my deed," he said firmly. "Signed, sealed, and recorded. My family's blood built this land, and you can't take it from me." The crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. For the first time, the men faltered. The power had shifted. The world was watching now. That night, Jacob sat on his porch surrounded by friends. The stars stretched endless above the fields. One neighbor placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've done more than stand your ground, Jacob. You reminded us all, this isn't just your fight. It's ours." Jacob's eyes burned with tears. 4 years he thought of his farm as his burden. Now he saw it as his bond, tying him to generations past and a community willing to fight for tomorrow. He whispered to himself, "They wanted me to sell out, but they forgot dignity isn't for sale." But just as peace seemed possible, engines roared down the road. Jacob and his neighbors rushed to the fence line. Headlights blazed. This time, it wasn't two men in a black SUV. It was a convoy of trucks, bulldozers, drilling rigs, backed by county sheriffs with flashing lights. A booming voice on a loudspeaker echoed across the fields. "By order of the state, we are seizing this property for development. Step aside or be removed." The crowd gasped. Jacob's fists tightened. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was war. Engines roared through the night like thunder rolling across the plains. Jacob Carter stood at the edge of his porch, fists clenched, as a convoy of county trucks and bulldozers crept down his dirt road. Their flashing lights lit up the fields like a battlefield. A sheriff's loudspeaker boomed. Jacob Carter, by order of the county, this land is being seized for development. Step aside or face arrest. His neighbors, dozens of them, gathered behind him, their faces pale but resolute. Some clutched lanterns. Others carried old farm tools, their only defense. Jacob's voice trembled, but it carried across the night air. This is my land. You want it? You will have to drag us all away. The bulldozers idled, engines growling like predators waiting to strike. Deputies lined up in formation, batons at the ready. Jacob's attorney, rushing from town, held up documents. This is illegal. The deed is valid. The county has no authority here. But the sheriff sneered. Paper means nothing when the state's already decided. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The law wasn't on their side. Corruption ran deeper than they feared. And then came the first act of intimidation. Deputies marched forward, shoving neighbors back, tearing down fence posts that marked Jacob's property line. Children cried. Cattle scattered in fear. Jacob stepped forward, raising his hands. Enough! A deputy shoved him hard in the chest. He stumbled but didn't fall. The crowd erupted in outrage, pushing back against a line of officers. The standoff had begun. The night turned chaotic. Officers began clearing equipment, marking spots for drilling rigs. Floodlights cast eerie shadows across the field. Jacob's neighbors formed a human chain around the barn, refusing to move. One woman shouted, "This land feeds us all. You can't steal it." The sheriff ordered arrests. Deputies stormed the line, dragging people away one by one. Jacob's attorney screamed, "Cameras, get this on tape." And they did. Reporters, tipped off earlier, filmed every shove, every unlawful order, every cry of pain. The footage went live within hours. Across the county, across the state, people watched the injustice unfold in real time. Just as the bulldozers rolled forward, a new sound pierced the night. Horns, dozens of them. Headlights filled the road as more trucks arrived. But these weren't county vehicles. They were farmers, teachers, even strangers from neighboring towns who had seen the broadcast. They poured into the field, doubling, then tripling the crowd. The deputies hesitated. The sheriff barked orders, but his men faltered. Jacob climbed onto the hood of his truck, raising the deed high. His voice roared over the chaos. This is what they're afraid of, the truth. This land is mine. It's ours. And if they want it, they'll have to fight every one of us. Cheers erupted. The human chain grew stronger, unbreakable. For the first time, the deputies looked outnumbered. The sheriff's face twisted with fury. "Stand down," he shouted, but his voice cracked under the weight of resistance. Jacob's community stood firm, their voices united. This land is ours. This land is ours. The bulldozers' engines died one by one. The contractors, pale and shaken, backed away. For the moment, the siege had been broken. Neighbors embraced Jacob, tears streaming down their faces. He had stood tall, but more importantly, he had shown them all the power of unity. But the war wasn't over. As the last county truck retreated into the night, Jacob noticed a black SUV parked at the edge of the field. The window rolled down. Inside sat one of the suited men, the developer who started it all. He smirked, raising a single finger as if making a promise. Then he mouthed two chilling words Jacob would never forget. "Not over." The SUV vanished into the darkness. Jacob gripped the deed in his hand, the weight of what was coming pressing down on him. He knew tonight was only the beginning. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning. Jacob Carter, dressed in a clean shirt and worn boots, clutched his battered hat in one hand and his deed in the other. His lawyer, Rebecca, whispered, "Stay calm. Today isn't just about your land. It's about exposing the whole machine." Inside, the courtroom buzzed. Developers in sharp suits lounged at one table, their smug smiles barely contained. On the other side sat Jacob and Rebecca, outnumbered but unbroken. The judge entered. All rise. The battle for Jacob's farm was about to begin. The developers struck first. Their attorney rose, voice smooth and confident. Your Honor, this man is not the rightful owner of the Carter land. Our client of evidence proving his family's deed expired decades ago. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Rebecca shot to her feet. That's a lie. We have proof of a recorded deed, signed and sealed. The judge leaned forward. Present your evidence. Jacob's heart pounded as Rebecca placed a yellow document on the table. This land has been in the Carter family for over 100 years. My client's grandfather signed this with the county registrar himself. But the developers smirked. Their lawyer slid forward a stack of pristine papers. Forgery, he declared. Convenient stories, nothing more. The room tensed. Jacob clenched his fists, whispering under his breath. They'll say anything to take what's ours. Witnesses paraded through the courtroom. County officials claimed they had no record of Jacob's ownership. A surveyor testified that drilling rights had already been granted to the developers. It seemed the walls were closing in. Then Rebecca stood. We'd like to call a witness of our own. The doors opened. A deputy, the same one who whispered to Jacob in jail weeks before, stepped inside. The courtroom buzzed. Under oath, his voice shook. I was ordered to arrest Mr. Carter, not because of trespassing, but because they found oil on his land. They wanted him out before the truth leaked. Shouts erupted. The judge slammed his gavel. Order. Jacob's eyes widened. The scheme was unraveling. Rebecca pounced. So you're saying the county, the developers, and law enforcement conspired to frame my client? The deputy nodded. Yes, they planned it all. Gasps shook the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. The developers' smiles cracked. Rebecca turned toward the jury. This isn't just about one farmer's land. It's about corruption at the highest levels. If they can steal Jacob Carter's farm, they can steal any of yours. For the first time, Jacob felt the tide turn. His voice broke as he whispered, maybe justice isn't blind after all. The judge dismissed the jury to deliberate. Hours crawled by like days. Finally, they returned. The foreman stood. We, the jury, find in favor of the defendant, Jacob Carter. His land deed is valid. The charges against him are dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Jacob dropped his hat, tears streaming down his face as Rebecca hugged him. Reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. But Jacob raised his hand, silencing the crowd. His voice rang out steady. This isn't just about oil. This is about truth. This is about fighting for what's right, no matter the cost. Outside, Jacob stood on the courthouse steps, the crowd cheering around him. But in the distance, parked across the street, sat the black SUV. Inside, the developer stared at Jacob, eyes like fire. He lifted his phone, speaking into it. Plan B, make sure Carter never sets foot on that land again. The SUV pulled away, disappearing into traffic. Jacob felt the cheer of the crowd, but in his gut, he knew the war wasn't over. The victory in court should have ended it. Jacob Carter walked his field with a new sense of peace, the jury's ruling still echoing in his mind. The land is his. But peace didn't last. One night, as crickets chirped and stars shimmered, headlights crept across the fields. Jacob rose from his porch chair, unease prickling his skin. A figure in black hurled something toward his barn. Moments later, flames erupted. The barn roared with fire, the smell of smoke choking the air. Jacob's neighbors rushed with buckets, but the inferno consumed everything. And in the distance, Jacob saw it, the black SUV, parked at the edge of the dirt road. Watching, waiting. This wasn't over. This was war. In the days that followed, the attacks escalated. Machinery vandalized. Crops poisoned. Shots fired in the night. Bullets lodged in Jacob's porch beams. His neighbors begged him, Jacob, please, it's too dangerous. Sell the land, save yourself. But Jacob shook his head. If I give in, they don't just take my land. They take my family's name. They take every fight our people ever stood for. Rebecca, his lawyer, pressed him harder. Jacob, they won't stop. This isn't about justice anymore. It's about power. If you don't act now, you may not live to see the harvest. Jacob's eyes hardened. Then it's time I stopped playing defense. Jacob gathered his community in the town hall. Farmers, teachers, shop owners, every face familiar, every heart tied to his land. He stood at the podium, voice steady. They've tried to jail me, burn me out, break me. But they forgot one thing. This land doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us. And we're not backing down. Cheers erupted. Rebecca laid out the plan, exposed the developer's crimes to the state attorney general. They had evidence, the deputy's testimony, forged documents, and now proof of arson. But as they prepared their case, Jacob received a chilling message. A letter slipped under his door, written in jagged ink. Last warning, step off your land, or we bury you under it. Jacob folded the paper, placed it in his pocket, and whispered, "Let them come." It happened on a stormy night. Engines roared once again as the convoy returned. Bulldozers, trucks, and armed men in rain-slick uniforms. Jacob's community stood waiting, lanterns and cameras in hand. Reporters, tipped off in advance, filmed every second. The sheriff stepped forward, soaked in rain, barking, "Move aside. This property is seized by order of the county." Rebecca shouted back, "You've already lost in court. You have no authority here." But the bulldozers lurched forward anyway. Jacob strode into the rain, planting himself in front of the machines. His voice thundered over the storm. "This land fed generations, buried generations. You want it. You will have to bury me too." The crowd roared in defiance, locking arms around him. And then, flashing lights split the darkness. State troopers swarmed in, sirens blaring. The attorney general himself stepped out, holding court orders. "Sheriff, stand down. Effective immediately, you and your men are under investigation for corruption, fraud, and conspiracy." Gasps cut through the storm. The sheriff's face drained of color as troopers slapped cuffs on him. For the first time, Jacob felt the weight lift. The reckoning had come. By dawn, the storm had passed. The fields were wet but safe. Jacob stood before his farmhouse. Neighbors gathered around. Reporters asked him what kept him fighting when so much was at stake. Jacob's voice cracked, but his words carried like gospel. "They thought I was just a farmer. But this land, it isn't date. It's blood. It's memory. It's dignity. And some things you don't sell. You protect them, no matter the cost." The crowd erupted in applause. Jacob's land was safe. His legacy secured. For now. Later that night, Jacob sat alone on his porch, watching the moonlight wash over his fields. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to breathe. But then, his phone buzzed. A text message glowed on the screen. "You won today, but the oil still flows, and we'll be back." Jacob's hand tightened around the phone. His eyes narrowed as he whispered into the night. "Then I'll be waiting."